Greetings, friends, and welcome to Head Above Water, the podcast about filmmaking and mental health and all it takes to go into this topsy-turvy business called show. Welcome to episode 15. Today we have our conversation with Liz Manashil from Bread and Butter and Speed of Life and the Sundance Creative Distribution Initiative. She's with Picture Motion now. She is quite an accomplished player in the independent movie space. We ran long. We had such a great conversation with her. We ran long, so I don't want to spend too much time with an introduction with you guys this week. Just don't forget, wherever you're listening to this podcast, if you're listening to us on Apple, Google, Spotify, Pandora, wherever else you can find us, leave us a review. Let me know what you're thinking about the show. I want to hear from you guys. Hope you guys have been enjoying what we're coming at you with, and we'll be back next week with more. And stay tuned on the other end of the interview with Liz, and I'll be back with a little bit. But until then, stay tuned for our interview with Liz Manashil. Thanks for joining us. Well, we're here with Liz Manashil, director, writer, producer, post, what else? Just the whole kit and caboodle. She's with us here for another episode of Head Above Water. Thank you for joining us today, Liz.
Thank you for letting me be on the show.
Absolutely. I want to just kind of dive in with it. This is a bit of a different kind of film podcast where we talk to writers and directors and other creatives about just mental health issues. And I don't mean like medical mental health issues, but just the things that filmmakers have to deal with to try to make a go of it in this business and all the things that we have to deal with. And we're doing this now in late June. So things have been going on in the world since we first decided to start talking that obviously, play into the mental health of a creative person that's kind of been limited by what's going on, or maybe unlimited just because maybe it opens up a whole bunch of new doors. But let me just dive in with you. I obviously want to talk about post-COVID life and pre-COVID life, so I don't know if we'll be bouncing back and forth between those things. But let me just ask you what you've been doing since all these lockdowns kind of started back in March. What have you and the family been doing to just persevere, just get through these trying times?
Yeah, you said the word family, and I don't know if you care, I laughed a little bit because my baby just started crying. What have we been doing? In the first few weeks, it was really tough, I think, for everyone. Obviously, it's a horrific situation we're in, so I feel like I'm kind of first world problems complaining about some of these like minor infractions. But, in the beginning, I was checking the news, that was really bad, and I wasn't getting outside, and I really trapped myself in the house. And we didn't have like a regular system of groceries, so you just get into this rut of like just real high anxiety. But then
even the basic stuff of going to the store, you have to rethink the whole thing up and like have these new, we also set up this process of bringing the groceries into the house and the clean area and the dirty area and the sanitize. So that's, something you never had to deal with before.
Yeah, and both me and my partner are still working. So what we've kind of allowed ourselves to do, as long as we have a job, is to not feel guilty about food purchases right now and to like put safety ahead of savings, if that makes sense. So we're using Instacart and we're not leaving the house, and it's, it's expensive, but we're doing it once a week. So we've got that system set up, and then I'm going for a walk every day, which is like tremendously helpful. Then in terms of just like concretely what I'm doing is I'm working my day job. And then every Sunday we have a production meeting for my third feature where we basically just talk about how we don't know what's going to happen for an hour. For an hour, we just talk about how we don't know what's going on.
What do you know? I don't know. What do you know? I read something on Twitter.
Should we go to this cast member? Should we go to this cast member? Should we be rejected by this cast member?
Right.
So it's been an evolution. But what's interesting, and I think this is the question below the question, maybe, is that I found like a certain calmness in being in quarantine because I feel like I can't have FOMO and I can't compare and despair because everyone's trapped.
Sure.
So like all of us can't progress in our career, so I can't be jealous of anyone.
Right. I felt that at the very beginning, and this is going to lead me into my next question. At the very beginning, for me, it was like, because I hadn't done anything for like a couple of months before everything shut down either. So like my life never really, and I'm a post guy, so I'm at home doing stuff anyway. My life never really changed. I'm still at home. I still work from home and do all of that. But I kind of was like, oh, here's my opportunity to catch up. I don't have I always feel perpetually behind and perpetually like say it's part of the jealousy is just like chasing what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
And I was like, everyone stopped. Here's my time to do stuff. And it leads me into my next question, because when everything was happening, you saw a lot of memes out there, you know, for creative people and filmmakers and you know, entertainment industry and things like that. Half of the people were like, here's your time to go be creative and do something, and you have all this time, go do that. And the other half of people were like, no, it's self-care. You don't have to feel guilty if you don't create anything. And I was like,
Yeah.
you know, so like we're in this like weird little paused moment where, yay, I want to go do more stuff, but you know, so it's like that weird little conflict there. So I was always curious, like how other people were dealing with that feeling. Were you one of those people that was like, no, I'm going to take time to do this self-care and not worry that I'm not creating anything?
Yeah.
But then that, you know.
In the beginning, I was like, take a break. It's just going to be a few weeks.
Right.
Like, just relax. And
Right.
now that it's been March, April, May, 4 months, it's over 4 months at this point for us, because I started quarantine March 12th. Now I'm feeling like, not like I have to catch up, but like, okay, you had your break, you know.
Big vacation's over.
Get to work. Like, it's not,
right.
I actually am not feeling in competition with anyone. I just feel like it's been a long time since I've written. And I mean, I haven't written since before, you know, since we were on set of Speed of Life, which is my second feature. After Speed of Life, I just stopped writing, you know, and so part of me is like, you should get back into writing again, even if you're not going to produce the script that you're going to write. Like, that was a good time for you to feel creative and feel like you were putting something out into the universe. I feel like I watched Little Women yesterday.
Okay.
Which I cried throughout the whole thing. And part of it was like, this is a great movie. But other part of it was like, she really cared about that movie. You're watching it and you're like, she really cared. She put this is my assumption. She put so much thought and heart into every single frame that now I'm just like, I want to care again. So that's what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to get myself back into caring as much as I did.
Sure.
When it was like the first project or the second project, I think that energy has been zapped for me a little bit. I don't know how you feel. Do you feel like?
Yeah, I have had, and that's why I was kind of joking with you before we started recording all of this, that there's going to be more of a gripe session for me, because I haven't really had a chance to really talk about any of this stuff with anybody for a really long time, you know, going on 4 months now. And I just felt, like I said, like when everything first started going down, and we're not holding to, at least in the beginning, we were holding to a very, very strict quarantine. My wife is a real estate agent, so she was considered essential and had to go out and do stuff. And we've been doing it, I think, pretty well and clean and right and all of that. But at the very beginning, like I said, I was like, here's my opportunity to like really go to town and like catch up. Cause I don't want to say like I've been coasting on getting over since, you know, 2018, but that's my baby. And like, I started thinking more and more about, do I want to push myself to write something when I haven't written something in a really long time? Do I really want to like push myself? Like, it didn't feel organic. Like I said, I would sit down and try to edit shows for the podcast, and it just felt like I was pushing myself. I wasn't ready yet. And it's the conflict, because like part of me is like, are you a pussy? Like, what are you doing? Like you're scared to like keep going. You're just I was trying to reconcile all these different feelings about doing stuff, and I just felt myself forcing it too much. And I was like, I'll get all these podcast episodes out. I mean, you know, and finally, while everybody else is quiet, I'll be releasing all this stuff, and then my name will be out there and it'll be great and all that. And I was just like, it just felt like a square peg in a round hole. And eventually I just had to be like, stop. Just stop. And then the next thing I knew, when I looked at the calendar, which is like, you know, a few days before I contacted you to like do this again, I was like, oh my God, it's been like 3 months and I've done almost nothing. I shot a little, you know, in the house here by myself, just like a little 5-minute like thing that I put online, because everyone was like making these short movies when everybody got shut down. So I did that to like get my yayas out. But it was just like, yeah, it's just all these weird conflicting feelings of like, I have all this time, but I have no time at all. But and it just, I'm still kind of working through it, but I wanted to still get back into socializing with people, like considering this socializing, because I just haven't been, speaking to people a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't really share on social media or anything like that. I'm not really like one of those like pour my heart out, online and stuff like that. So I really just wanted to start by getting back into talking to people about what they've been doing during this time and seeing just how far out there my experience has been.
Well, because I'm working remotely. My job got rid of its offices, and we're all remote employees until January.
Wow. Oh, and wow, through the end of the year and everything.
Yeah, and we were working out of a WeWork anyway. So like the LA office was in a WeWork, the New York office had an office. Almost every day I'm talking to someone. And we have bi-weekly, like twice a week, not every 2 weeks, Zooms. So we see each other's faces. But I understand that I am one of the lucky ones in actuality, because I'm forced to socialize because I'm reclusive and I wouldn't be reaching out to friends, and I still have my job. But I get what you're saying, because every now and then we'll do a Zoom with friends, and I won't necessarily want to do it because I'm weird and antisocial sometimes.
No, I feel that.
But then when you're on the Zoom, it's like you can breathe. You're like, I was thinking about this too. It's like everything is heightened. I've been watching movies that like normally would not be impactful. It's almost like when you're on a plane. When you're on a plane and there's this great NPR story about a guy who only cried on planes. When you're on a plane, I feel like you're stuck. And so for me, I always cry during sappy movies on planes, even if they're mediocre. And I feel that way about quarantine films. It's like you watch a movie in quarantine and it hits you harder, and you hang out with your friends in quarantine and it touches you more. It's like everything means more. And so I found that there's like an importance to all of these things. Like you were saying, like you don't socialize as much. So it's like this podcast has become an opportunity to see people.
Yeah.
I didn't think socialization was meaningful, and I still can't be convinced until I'm in the middle of it and talking to someone. And then it's like, oh, I feel so much better now.
Right. And I get that feeling too, because I would, I have some old college buddies that we don't really, maybe we'll text every now and again, like every few months sometimes. And when everything started to shut down, they were like, let's have a Zoom call. And initially I was like, I don't mind these my college buddies. Like, let's have a Zoom call. But when the time for the call came around, I was like, we don't like talk on the phone anyway. We don't hang out like one of them lives in Massachusetts, another lives in New Jersey, another one, is in Florida sometimes. I'm out here. Like we don't do this normally. So it just, the fact that we're doing it at all just reminds you of how fucked up the world is.
How dire things are.
Yeah. So I'm like, the fact that we're even doing it makes me not want to do it. But once you start talking to someone and you're all friends anyway, like it's totally fine. It's not like it's weird to talk to your friends, but just that initial like, so this is how we're doing it now? Okay.
And it's crazy how wonderful it is just to talk about your Instacart. like I became a vegetarian in quarantine.
Oh yeah. How's that going?
I love it. And I know that's like my partner eats twice as much as
I
me.
Cannot. Yeah. So I will just live vicariously through you.
And like, I'm not one of those, I don't think a lot of vegetarians are, but I think there's like that fear of judginess when you hear someone has become a vegetarian. But like now all I want to do is talk about my Instacart and recipes and like, and I find that I get to do that on these friend Zooms, which is really nerdy, but it's fun.
It's something to get your mind off of it. That's for sure.
Yeah. It's a goal. Like I feel like I'm on a pathway now, which, like I always have career goals, which I'm sure you kind of do too. You always set these like milestones for yourself. And for now, I'm like, finally something to distract me from my career goal is this like food goal. And I really enjoy it. It's really nerdy of me. So that's been a big part actually of my mental health, is making the switch.
Great. So as we start to transition back into, as the president would say, transition to greatness. But as we transition into this next unknown phase, at least for our business and for film production and stuff like that, what are your fears about having to go into this new world, especially, being a micro-budget filmmaker where we don't have the resources of a Paramount, of a Warner Brothers, of a Universal to just throw money at these things? Talk to me a little bit about your approach to getting back in the swing of things and how you think you're going to be able, not just, from a logistical standpoint of having, a safety coordinator on set and stuff like that, but that's just especially as a director and someone whose job is like, to marshal your crew. Talk to me about how you think you're going to transition into this new world of production, especially as it applies to micro budget films.
Well, with this third feature, I very specifically I brought on producers for my second feature because I did not want to produce, which is a departure for me. So I'm actually trying to not take on any of those items. Like I'll share news articles and I'll share ideas. Like in the beginning when the quarantine happened, I was like, guys, I really think we could shot list so that we do this entire film in singles. I think we could do it. Let's just do it. Let's do a film in singles. Let's just make this movie. But now, because I'm not dealing with logistics and we're probably gonna have to do some more fundraising because we had a fully funded film, but not for the new SAG rules.
Right.
So now actually what I've noticed the issue is casting. I can get in the door just like I got in the door for my first two features because I always cast my projects. And we have a casting director on this film, but she's doing it as like a favor. So it's a team effort. So I can get in the door with cast, but I think, and no one's saying this outright, but I'm pretty sure no one wants to commit to anything right now.
Right.
Like we don't have dates because we can't have dates because we don't have a SAG signatory number because we don't have dates. It's like this catch-22.
Right.
We don't know what the date can be, so we can't set the date, so we can't have the SAG number. We posted breakdowns on casting services, and we got a lot of amazing submissions, but then we have this like little flea in our ear that says, think bigger, think bigger. So we go out to cast, and we did attach one person before the pandemic who's just kind of hanging on. But anytime we go on to anyone else, they'll either not respond to our emails about availability or they'll just pass. And this is anecdotal. It's not like hard data, but my assumption is that like no one wants to jump on board a micro budget feature.
Right, right.
They
right.
don't. We don't know what we're doing. And even though I find you attach talent and then you don't get to shoot for another year, they're not thinking in that way. They're thinking, oh, I can't slow down this indie production that's ready to go. So the strategy is all confused right now. And so the struggle for me actually is attaching talent.
Does it get you down? Like, how do you deal with I mean, listen, as someone who's casted movies before, you have people in mind, they'll pass or something like that, and you're like bummed out and you move on and you find a way to still make the picture you want to make with who you can get. But I'm sure there's people that you've heard back from that you were really hopeful and really, thought that you could get, but now for whatever reason, they're going to pass. And, does it start to drag on you after a while that like, this isn't going to be the movie that I want it to be because I can't even get anybody in it? Or, how do you get past that block of like, here's yet another thing that like we have to deal with? It's, it's enough.
I'm a really impatient person, like in my personal life, in my professional life, in anything. I'm very impatient. And so
let's get into movies.
I know. Yeah. It's a lot of waiting. And I think what the issue is for us is that everyone's on board crew-wise. Everyone's committed. This is a film inspired by a woman who went through a lot of personal trauma, and it's very unique and no one else is going to make it. We've been through a lot together as a team. I've been attached to this project for like 2 years. It's been in the works for like 3 years. So it's like, we're going to make it. It's just waiting. It's right. The wait. I definitely take every rejection personally, but if I really think about it, we've only been officially rejected by one actor. We've gone out to other people. We've emailed their reps. We've asked for availability. We've done the whole thing. But in terms of me doing letters with attachments, the full, like the adoration email.
Right, the full package.
And that, we got rejected by him 2 days ago. But for me, every rejection, whether it's a festival or an actor, it feels like it's a confirmation in a way, which is really horrible. Like, I don't know if you feel this way, but it's like, oh, of course they were going to say no.
Right.
But until you get the answer, there's that little bit of hope that's like, well, maybe they like my work and maybe they'll like see something in this film and maybe they'll understand. And then I get super negative when the rejection happens. And then you just have to kind of bounce back. Like when you lose a location and a better location comes along.
Sure.
I think that is what happens in casting. I do think like a better fit will come along. I just have to wait, and I hate waiting.
I mean, yeah, now is just not the time for impatient people, unfortunately. I'm also very much the same way. That was kind of one of the reasons that I kind of put a block in front of myself for doing any writing, because that was always, my initial career goal once, Getting Over came out a couple years ago, is I wanted to direct a documentary, check that box, and I want to direct a narrative someday. Mm-hmm. And just have those two, and then everything else I can work on other people's stuff and edit. I want to edit I want to edit a feature. I want to do all this other stuff. But I was like, I'm going to start, once everything happened in like March and April, I was like, I'm going to start writing. And I have some friends that are actual writers, because I haven't written a script in 15 years. So I was like, I'm going to get back into it. I'm going to write something that's going to be great. We're going to move forward. We're going to do all these things. And then once everything, and I had, Dreamcast in mind and all of this stuff. And just when everything kind of, I was like, well, why am I even going to bother? Like, why write a script that, like you said, like I'm going to send it out and just wait and wait and wait. And I can't, especially right now, it feels like I can't control the pace of a project. Like with Getting Over, it was my own thing. I was making it on my own time while I was doing a day job. I would wake up every day and said, as long as I do something to push the movie forward today, I'll be happy. Yeah. And some days I did, and some days I didn't. But with a narrative, you're at the mercy of so many other different
system,
of a horrible system and so many different forces. And then when I started hearing all this, the SAG stuff come down and we're going to approve every single thing, I'm like, well, why am I going to write a script that it can be the most wonderful script in the world that people love, but when I tell them that I can only raise $100,000 on Kickstarter, they'll be like, well, we're not doing this anyway. So I'm like, why am I even going to start?
Can I answer that question?
Absolutely.
I know it's kind of rhetorical. One is, it's going to take you more than 3 months to write this script. You know what I mean?
That's how impatient I am. I'm like, I'm going to finish this in a week and it's going to be genius.
But it's everything, like we said, takes 10 times longer than you think it's going to take. The other reason is, you don't tell them you raised $100,000. Right. You tell them you have a fully funded film.
Right. I have it. I have it. Just don't worry about it.
I ran into that though with this most recent cast attachment, is I've never had an agent press me for the budget number to the point where they wouldn't let go. And for this latest rejection from a cast member, his agent was like, what budget level is this? And I was like, SAG ultra low. And he's like, okay, what were the budget levels of your other films? And I was like, SAG ultra low. And he was like, no, what were they? And I was like, oh, they were under 250K.
Right. I mean, that's the thing.
Like, I need the exact numbers. And it's like, he was not within his rights to ask me that question. I've never been asked that question before. And I felt like I had to answer it. That was crazy to me, because maybe he's produced a feature, but I'm going to assume that he is not. And I find that a lot of agents, I don't think agents can produce. I think managers can produce. But I think a lot of agents don't have the concept of what things actually cost, because they're in this world of rhetoric of millions of dollars.
Right, right.
They talk in a different way than us micro-budget filmmakers do. And so I immediately was like, oh, well, I'm going to be discriminated against now, because I'm going to have to show my cards. And I'm not going to lie. I can bend the truth a little bit, but I can't lie about this, because I've talked so much about being a micro-budget filmmaker.
Right,
I can't erase all those things from the internet. So I just wanted to say, like, for you, you were saying you could raise $100,000 on Kickstarter and make it. It's
or whatever, whatever the case may be.
Then you just say, oh, I have an equity investor who's supplementing the budget.
Right.
It doesn't.
Oh, that's all. See, here's the lessons learned for all you doc filmmakers looking to get into the narrative and the casting of it. You just shut up and don't tell anybody anything.
Don't say anything. Ever.
That's hilarious. Yeah, it's a good lesson to learn. Let me ask you a question then about, because you were talking about rejection and things like that. Let's go back to when Speed of Life was on the circuit, and we can get away from the COVID chat for a little bit. When Speed of Life was on the circuit, how many festivals did you play for the entirety of the whole run?
think like 15. It was around the
15?
same amount as bread and butter. Bread and butter, I used to like drunk festival submit. Like I used to be like, let's do it. That's good. Submit Film Freeway.
Right.
I didn't do that with Speed of Life. I wanted to save my money, and I really was fairly calculated about what I applied to. So the ratio was much better for the 15, but I would say it's the same level of acceptance into festivals as bread and butter. But I think that bread and butter was received a lot better. I know that's not the question you asked, but that's immediately what I think about is like
Sure.
comparing the two.
Because I'm just curious about dealing with the rejection from all the festivals. Because I think one of the things that's going to really change, and it's already changing with everything starting to move virtual, is the festival circuit for me at least. And I know you're way more juiced into all of that than I am, but I think the festival circuit as we know it is probably coming to an end. I think that, and hey, listen, I would like to be wrong. I want to go to Austin for South by Southwest next year and have 100,000 people there taking all the precautions. But I just have a feeling it's going to just start to shift. And the one thing that I had discovered, when you're someone who like me, who gets jealous of other people and is competitive, even though it's not necessarily a competitive, world, we're all fighting for a certain number of spots. And it used to be fighting for these spots for, at least for me, like I love meeting people. I love going to the festivals. I love shaking hands. I love people asking me questions. I love the whole nine.
Mm-hmm.
And it just feels like it's not going to be the same in the future. It will get back to that, but at least for next year and, until we, get out of this, I just feel like the whole environment's going to be different. So I'm curious about your feelings about, just having to endure the festival circuit and dealing with, the rejection and all of that, and how you're able to, put that stuff behind you for the most part and keep moving forward.
I think when you make a movie, I talk about this a lot. There's this thing that I refer to called filmmaker delusion. And you have to believe that your film is good enough to get into Sundance or South by or Tribeca or TIFF. Like you have to believe it. And very often it is good enough to get into those festivals, but it may not be selected.
Sure.
And I think in the beginning of your festival run, you're submitting to the top tier festivals first, right? And once in my case, you got accepted to South by, but like once you, Liz Manashil, get rejected from these festivals, you start to realize, okay, well, I'm not this level film.
Right.
I'm here, or I'm here, or I'm over here, or whatever it is. I'm a genre. So I think the rejection is only hard in the beginning. I've had my heart broken by South by so many times.
Which is like, it's just like my experience is so different than so many other people. That's why I love hearing about other people's rejection. No, I'm just curious how other people take that rejection, because my experience on the circuit in 2018 totally different from that, which you just described, and from what I hear from a lot of other people. So it just really, I'm enthralled by the whole concept of this like gladiator mentality that the industry has created. Throw all these indie filmmakers into a pit and let them fight their way out.
I found that I can't ever trust festival curation, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't want to take anything away from you, because I've seen Getting Over. I really love it. Like,
oh, thank you.
And South by was right to program it. So I don't want to take anything away from you by saying, well, they're always wrong. I think
no, listen,
right. But
I still don't know why.
I
have no idea why.
Authentic film made over several years.
Does nobody else do those things?
You'd be surprised. But I think the issue is like, I can point to various different reasons why I get programmed in a film festival. I could say, well, Ann Dowd was in my movie. I could say, I'm a lady director. I could say, this is a genre film. I could say this, it references David Bowie, which is like, he was a very popular character. It has wormholes in it. Like I could talk about various things.
Wormholes.
But I don't ever think, I've come to the point where it's not necessarily quality. I can't trust that when I'm programmed in a film festival, it's because people loved the movie. And I can't trust that when I was rejected from a film festival, it's because people didn't like it. I'm at this point where I feel like everything is unpredictable. And the thing that will help all filmmakers is getting ingrained in the system a little bit more. So that's where I'm at, is this argument that my only way in to like the Sundances, South bys, TIFF, Tribecas of the world is to either suit myself up with representation, get a nonprofit associated with me in some way, or make a name for myself in any way I can, scrambling to make a name for myself. So
Right.
like, that's kind of what I'm doing, is like, I love speaking opportunities. I speak on panels, I speak on podcasts. And so I'm just like grassroots growing a very,
Your
very, very
brand.
small, like a brand for
We're
myself. Because
branding.
but like I've been rejected by every single thing you could get rejected by. And, I think we've all been in the place where we've seen other films been accepted and we're just like,
yeah, what?
yeah, what? And the same thing happens where I fall in love with movies genuinely, because I ran a fellowship at Sundance where I watched a lot of movies and I fell in love with movies. And some of them only played regional festivals. Some of them played only lower tier festivals. And, like there's politics there too. So I don't know if this answers your question, but like, I'm trying not to take it personally. I always do. And then I'm trying to like beat the system in the long term.
Sure.
And I don't know if I'll get there, but that's my plan, is like just to work so hard that they have to notice me.
Let me ask you this, kind of playing off of that a little bit. And I've actually, sometimes I'm afraid to ask questions like this because I don't want to like make a thing of it, because you're a person and you're a filmmaker and you're good at what you do. As a woman trying to be a filmmaker and being in a minority in the the directing pool of directors. So I've always been curious, like, is that just another thing to have to, that annoys you to have to deal with? Not that being a woman would annoy you, but you know what I'm saying?
I think I get your question. For me, I don't think my rejections come because I'm a woman. I do see a lot of men have lots of opportunities, but I think they make more commercial work than I do. I also think that there is like a pipeline that people get spit out of that I never really attempted to join. I am so impatient that with my first feature, I was like, well, let's just fucking do this, And like,
right. I don't care with, that I'm a woman director. Let's just make a movie.
Yeah. Like I applied to Sundance Lab once and I got rejected. And I think I applied to Film Independent once and I got rejected. But it wasn't like I spent years, like most people do, applying to these development tracks and really trying to get that systemic support. I didn't really give it the old college try. So I made a film, my first feature, which was, I love it. It's sweet, but it's not edgy. It's not like, sorry, you can hear my child scream.
It's all right.
It's not something that I think people are drawn to in terms of like culture shifting works of art. It's a romantic comedy. For me, it's not necessarily my gender. It's the content I'm drawn to. I've always been drawn to low stories, small stories, little plots, dialogue based. And those directors were really supported in like the 90s. But like now, I don't think they are. I think it's more, what are the bold dynamic voices? How do you stand apart from the status quo? And all I can do is in my like weirdly subversive romantic dramedies is have like Ray Santiago go down on Ann Dowd. But like no one talked about that.
Pretty edgy, actually.
I thought so, but no one like ever mentioned it. I think one time someone was like, that was a little shocking.
Interesting choice.
Yeah. So I would say like, I don't think it's my gender, because also I've always produced my work. So I've never felt a level of discrimination. I do think it's the content that I'm drawn to and the fact that I didn't push for more. I always work with the actors I want to work with. The lead in Bread and Butter probably could have been a regular TV star, but I wanted to work with Christine Weatherup. And maybe my life would have been different had I pushed for someone more of note. But I worked with who I thought was the best actress. And so I think those kind of decisions actually shoot you in the foot sometimes. But like emotionally, I feel satisfied. with it.
Okay, good. Yeah, I guess that's really the crux of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking too, because I remember a couple of months ago, you've made mention before of, like this is the content that you're drawn to, and it just happens to be something that plays into, ultra low budget, that like you were going to try to go a more commercial route as a director and pursue that a little bit more. Did you choose this path because it felt like an easier path to success, or and you were trying to get away from the commercial aspect of it? It takes a lot more work to have a successful commercial career. Did you think it would just be easier to be successful this way?
One is my lack of patience, right? So it's like
Right.
I got rejected once from like the Sundance Lab and once from Film Independent. I'm like, well, fuck it, I'm doing myself.
Right.
So that's part of it. And so that is a path of least resistance. The other part is there's this great interview with Sean Baker that my boss used to talk about, where Sean, like, he met someone in film school or college, and that guy was like, I have $1 million movie I want to make, and I'm going to make it. It's going to be my first movie. And Sean was like, what if you made something lower budget? And he was like, no, I'm going to make this movie. And then like the two friends met up together 10 years later, and the guy still had not made his $1 million movie.
Right.
I think coming out of USC Film School, you have a lot of people who have big dreams, and then you watch them say, I have this big meeting, I think this is going to be greenlit. And they say all these things to you, and they talk the talk, and then everything always falls through. Like the rug is always pulled out from underneath them. So I feel like through witnessing that, I just decided, no, I hate rejection. I'm like already really sensitive human. Like, I don't think I could go through that experience where it's like, maybe,
Right.
no. So it's from watching the bravado of other people. It's from watching the system kind of screw over a lot of people. But it's also my heroes were people who were successful doing this.
Right.
And so I think I just came around at a time where this was really popular. Like, this is very frequent, what we do. Like you run a podcast, I run a podcast, I ran a fellowship. Like, you will just meet droves and droves of filmmakers who are like, I have this micro budget feature, blah, 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 blah. So I don't think I had realized how ununique it was until I did it.
Right.
And then it didn't feel like representation was a calling. So I felt like I had to make another movie. And I genuinely thought, I'll make another movie, and the people are going to pay attention. They're going to they're going to like let me in a little bit more. Didn't happen. So the idea right now is I'm co-directing this film, Lady Parts, with my partner. And he's the one who's always checking me. I'm always like, oh, I really want to work with this actor. I love him so much. He was, like a 5-minute role in this Netflix series, but I just think he's amazing and he makes me cry. And he's like, I've never heard of this guy. No, we're not going to him. So he's checking us. He's like, go bigger, go stronger, go bolder. And that whole thing is reminding me that, like, I'm going to try harder to win the system's approval over the long term. So I applied for mentorship programs for the first time last year. I'm on my second run this year. I'm going to keep on applying till I get accepted. So I don't know if this is your answer, but I'm just trying to say that I didn't know that this was the path of least resistance until I saw how hard it was for everyone else after I had made 2 features.
Right.
And it was really hard to make the 2 features. It was no walk in the park, but I'm just saying, like, you and I both know millions of filmmakers who have been slugging it out waiting to make their first, because they're
what you were saying, like I've heard that story. I mean, how many times I've got the $1 million idea, and I mean, I was the same way. I'm like, I want to if I'm going to write something, I'm going to write something to make it. Like, I'm not writing something to like then have other people tell me I'm good or bad. I already have myself to tell me how bad I am. I don't need you to tell me too. So like, especially, coming from and it's very, very different in the documentary world. The documentary world and the mental health issues in the documentary world are also very, very different, because as hard as it is to make it as a narrative filmmaker, it's almost twice as hard to make it as a documentary filmmaker, just because, I mean, it doesn't get the same coverage in pop culture now more than ever. Certainly. I mean, documentaries are huge, but that's also led to an influx of quote unquote competition, or just an influx of people getting into documentary. And now you have to slug it out with people that maybe didn't go to film school, but they have a story that they like and they're pursuing. So it's a little bit, the
And
two
they're just
worlds
turning
are,
their camera on, right? And they're
yeah,
just recording right now. Like they can.
yeah, and I'm making a documentary. So it's slightly different, but it's the same, for me it was always, yeah, if I'm going to do something, I want to make it and then like let somebody reject it for the movie that it is and not like the script that I wrote and anything like that. My question is a little bit about ego and being a director. Some people love to be a director and they love the title director. They love, and I can't think of anyone in particular, but just, directors are, they run their mouth and they have big egos and they run the set and stuff like that. You seem to be doing a bit of a different thing, and now you're working more with your partner. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about a little bit too, because, like I said, my wife's a real estate agent. I do video work for her. We do not work well together. We don't. We've tried and we'll continue to try, but we do not work very well together. And that's why I love talking to couples. I had Elena Weinberg and Duncan Coe on for my first episode. Talk to me a little bit about working with your partner and not necessarily taking a back seat, but you were the solely credited director on your other films. And now you are actively saying, come in and do this with me and split the credit. And, and it's obviously going to work for you guys, but I'm just curious how that dynamic works and what made you decide to, especially if you're going to try to pursue a more commercial career, sharing credits might not necessarily be, the straightest way to do that. So just talk to me about working with Sean and what it's like and, what you guys do well together, what you don't do well together, and how it drags on you and how it lifts you up.
We tried to write together, by the way, me and Sean, and we couldn't.
Tried.
I'm sure he would have been fine with me, but like, I'm very passionate about dialogue and I'm very particular about dialogue. And because it comes from like me acting out scenes by myself in my bedroom as a kid. Like I want to be the person that puts those words in people's mouths. Anyway, we got in a lot of tiffs about that. Sean's much better about story and plot. I'm stronger with dialogue and I love writing it, but we couldn't gel. And for me, having 2 features under my belt as a woman director, as a woman writer director was really important before I was willing to share the credit with anyone else, because I wouldn't want anyone to say, oh, it's not her, it's him.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I feel like I've established a foundation where people can be like, well, she's done this twice, so she's carrying at least half of the load here. What's fantastic about Sean is that not only he's an actor, so he's great with actors, and we've co-directed 2 shorts before, 2 like really short projects, but he's really wonderful with camera. And I don't mean like he's a cinematographer himself, but like we have these camera meetings every single Sunday and Sean and I will shot list together and then we'll storyboard with the cinematographer and we'll create overheads together. And I don't even know about splitting the look. I've made 2 features and I don't even know about eye lines the way a director would understand eye lines, because I've leaned on my cinematographers. My brain doesn't work in that way. My brain doesn't work spatially. It works. I'm a very verbal person, not so much visual. So what he brings to the table, I'm learning from. So every shot listing meeting, he's like, I don't know, I really like this idea of dollying in. And I'm the type of director, if you've seen my work, where it's like shot, reverse shot. It's like static camera. It's like breaking it into thirds. Like it's very generic. I basically ruin all the amazing, gorgeous things that Julia Swain and Katie Walker have done in my films by being like, let's just do this static shot. So what I'm trying to say is like, he brings so much to the table. And I feel like I'm learning. And every now and then I will get frustrated by the fact that I don't feel as perceptive as he is on that front. But then what I bring to the table is like, I've got a lot of gumption. I've got a lot of ambition. And I keep us on track. I always talk about deliverables and I'm doing the casting and, like I have experience, but I'm leaning on him to improve the visuals of this film. And I really think that this film is going to be a lot stronger than the other films that I've done, because every single shot, he's like, is this the best thing we could do? What's dynamic? What's exciting? What's commercial? What's going to be fun? Whereas before I was like, let's just get through the shot list meetings.
Right.
Like, I was just kind of biting my nails throughout the whole thing. So, and I could bring him in here if you want to ask him a question.
I mean, I'd love to hear what what he has to say about working with you. I mean, like I said, just I mean, or if like you can speak for him and make him. He thinks I'm the greatest.
Let me ask, Shawnee, can you come in here? Jason wants to ask you a question. I'll swap out. I'll go see the baby, and you could talk to him for a minute. Is that okay, Jason?
Yeah.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. Nice to meet you officially.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. I just wanted to ask you, so I was asking Liz about, because she's had a couple of features that she's directed, with sole credit, and now she's transitioning into, bringing you into the fold, and you guys are going to be co-directing things moving forward, or at least, for lady parts and what's, coming next.
Right.
I wanted to hear what your thoughts were about transitioning from her kind of being the director of the household, and now you guys are doing it together. What's it like to work with her on that stuff? And do you, what do you worry about when you guys work together?
Yeah, well, I think part of it is because she's not the writer of the screenplay, that perhaps she's distanced from the project a little bit in that way. So not that she doesn't have a extreme amount of passion for the upcoming movie, and not that she, isn't going to give 100% like she does for her first two projects, but I think
sure.
She was more attached to the material in a certain way because she had written it and it was her own. So I think that has sort of allowed the transition to ease potentially better than if this had been another screenplay that she had written.
Right.
I think that we've sort of established boundaries to a certain degree in the terms of the way in which we're going about this. There's going to be overlap, certainly, but it's sort of come down to she's going to be directing more for the actors and more for the performances, and I've sort of been given the responsibility of directing more of the look of the picture and the camera.
So there's a clear delineation there.
Yes, I mean, I would say it's kind of like maybe 70-30 each way.
Right, there will be overlap. Sure.
Yeah, it's arbitrary that percentage, but
right.
Yeah, I think that's sort of how we've set about going toward this project. And in terms of do I worry about anything in particular? Well, I mean, I think anytime you're working with someone creatively, are you going to be on the same page?
Right.
You're going to have an idea that says, well, I think it should go in this direction, and somebody says, no, I think it should go in that direction. And when generally there's a hierarchy where one person wins.
Right. Someone's got to pick. You got to pick your battles.
Right. In this case, it's sort of like when we get there is, how does the hierarchy come down eventually?
Right.
But so far we've been.
Do you feel it's mimicked your marriage or your, being together at all? Like, do you find that like the fights that you have over creative things are the same kinds of, fights that you guys have over, parenting or, buying groceries? The only two things that have to do with marriage, parenting and buying groceries.
Yeah. I don't know, actually. I hadn't really thought about it.
Maybe not even, but now you're going to start thinking about it.
Yeah, now I'm really going to get down and analyze that part of it. But I don't know. I've kind of felt like when we're in the mode of, we'll look at the script or we'll look at shot listing or, this, that, and the other, at least now in pre-production, it feels slightly different. It feels like a different relationship. So for me, I feel like I've sort of been able to separate the two.
Sure.
And, there hasn't been like, we start shot listing and it's like, yeah, well, you didn't take the trash out tonight.
When it starts bleeding over into, into real life.
There hasn't been a crossover as of yet.
Right. Now that like you're going to be sharing, co-directing credit with her, do you feel like you're taking anything away? Because she was the one that wanted to be the director. Do you want to be a director too? Like, do you feel like, wait a minute, you're the director of the family. I don't want to step in and yes, it's going to elevate the project and make it better, but that won't come to fruition until everything is done and it's out there for the world to see. So do you feel like, you find yourself like walking a tight line because you don't want to take over or you don't want to, take any thunder away from what she's trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly wouldn't want to take anything away. I've always wanted to be in the creative realm of filmmaking. I'm sort of a actor director is probably what I would call myself if I had to put down a label. So I've always wanted to direct movies. When we were going to shoot this thing in June, I guess, and which is right now. We were going to be starting like last week, but of course,
it is what it is.
Factors of the world have coalesced to say, no, you can't do that right now. But there seemed to be a weird opening with this particular project where she didn't necessarily know where she was going to be in June. I didn't know where I was going to be in June. So the ability of us both to work on it kind of made perfect sense. And I was able to sort of fill something of a vacuum for her and her with me, vice versa. So I don't know what the future holds in terms of if we finally get this project off the ground and we have co-directed this, if the next project is, oh yeah, we're definitely going to co-direct this one, or you're going to direct your own movie, I'm going to direct my movie, or, only time will tell for that.
Got it. So yeah, so you haven't like made a full, like a firm plan for the, like, we're now a team. Like this is just what it is. It's just going to depend on, what the future future brings.
Yeah, probably. I mean, if she writes the next script, that'll probably have a great deal to do with how we approach it. And,
sure.
Yeah.
She was telling me, and this will be the last one for you, I'll let you get back to it. So she was saying that you guys have tried to write together before, and it wasn't the most successful pairing. Was there when you guys were talking about, you coming into the directing fold, was there any fear there? We already don't do this well together. Should we really be trying this? Why do we want to do this to ourselves?
Well, probably. I think with the writing, it was a little bit different because, the script that eventually became Speed of Life. I don't know if she's relayed this story to you, but she started out with that saying, "I want to make a horror movie."
Oh no!
Oh yeah, the genesis of that project was it was going to be a horror movie. She thought let's do that. It could be potentially profitable because you don't necessarily need big stars or big budget to make a horror film. So let's try that out. And so we approached that I was going to help her write the screenplay because I'm a little bit more versed in horror than she is. So, maybe I had a certain expertise in writing that. She eventually, whether it was because of me or just the fact that wasn't the story she wanted to tell,
right?
That hit a roadblock, and she took on the script herself and made it herself. So I don't know if it was completely that we just had no way to work together as writers, or if it was just because the project itself didn't lend to our common sensibilities. So I don't, maybe in the future we will write a screenplay together. Who knows?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think when we're sort of like, we're going to direct this project together, could some of the same woes come up?
Right.
Sure they could. I'm sure with any directing pair, whether they're a couple or not a couple,
right.
Other than the Coen brothers, I guess, but maybe they have their own conflict. I don't know.
There's only one. That's the only one we know.
That's what people say.
Right. Them and the Wachowskis. That's pretty much it.
Maybe the Safdie brothers. I don't know how they work, but
right. So let me ask you this then, and then I'll let you go. Are you happy working with her? Do you enjoy doing it?
Yeah, so far. We'll see what the future holds, as with everything. But I think that with the delineation of camera versus actor, we've got a good sense of it. And I think that so far it feels like it's going to be a really great project to work on, and hopefully the final product will reflect that.
Outstanding. Well, great. Well, thanks for talking to me for a little bit. I wanted to kind of get a little bit of, your feel for working with her. So
thank you.
So let me just wrap up with a couple of other things. Well, first of all, let me ask you, is there anything that because I said the topic of the show is mental health, but it's not really from like a clinical point of view. It's more of just how we as filmmakers just try to, get by, on a daily basis with all the things that are racking around in our heads. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about, or anything that's on your mind?
I mean, something that just hasn't been acknowledged, even though this podcast is about mental health, is that I've had panic attacks for like the past 15 years. So like this is like my anxiety is not just like this charming quirk, which I lean into, I must admit.
Oh, I mean, you have to. I mean, listen, I tell people I'm a neurotic Jew from New York, but like that opens a whole other can, like, oh, really? Tell me about it. No, I don't want that. That's really all I'm going to let you know. So like, I get that. So, but where does that come from?
I think it's just like, it's a control thing. I think it's, for me, it's like, a lot of my anxiety revolves around feeling like I'm running out of time, or worrying about not living up to my potential, or not making the most out of every single second of every day. Like a lot of, and for me, panic attacks arise out of nowhere. I don't know what the origin of the actual panic attack is, but my anxiety
Sure.
arises out of like Sean and I would probably get in a fight in like 6 hours, because I'll be like, it's Saturday, we should be doing, like, this is our only free day, we should be doing something really important, like we have that fight every Saturday. And then he's just like, doing nothing is very important. And I'll be like, good point, Sean. So I think just, I wanted to acknowledge that for anyone else who has high anxiety, and I mean, I've never had it. I think it may have been diagnosed, but I mean, just the acknowledgement of, someone else out there, me, feels it as well. And I get through my panic attacks by watching a YouTube video, or, breathing for 10 minutes, or looking at the clock. I mean, there's various different things that I do,
Sure.
but like, the struggle is real, and anxiety is terrifying, and to not just sweep it under the rug. That's all.
Yeah, I try not to talk too much about myself on the shows, because I want, obviously I want the guests to, get across whatever they would like. But I used to have panic attacks years ago. Very,
Don't
very.
anymore? You stopped your panic attacks?
It manifests itself in different ways. It used to be the stereotypical walking in the store and out of nowhere, just like, why am I breathing? What does it all mean? Like out of nowhere. And that used to happen to me a lot in college in my first few years out here in LA. You saw my film, like I lost my parents in my early 20s, and have not really felt like I've had a lot of guidance out here. When I moved out here, I didn't have anyone to just, I couldn't pick up the phone and call my mother and be like, I just miss New York, I want to come home. Like I didn't have, like I was on my own. So like a panic attack would come. And like I said, I had said it earlier, like there's this voice in my head that's always like, suck it up. And, so eventually, and I try not to, sometimes I steer into it. Sometimes I listen to my, it's always that voice that's always, at least for me, it's just always going, just always being a devil's advocate in my own ear. And sometimes that pushes me to do good things. And sometimes it's debilitating, because sometimes, like during these lockdowns, I just don't want to do anything at all. And a lot of my life as a post guy and an editor is sitting in a dark room all day anyway. So I think I kind of chose that life because I like being an introvert. I like being in a dark room all day and not talking to anyone, and watching movies and making movies and things like that. So the panic attacks just kind of went away on their own, but I still get just debilitating anxiety over the silliest little things sometimes. Like just seeing a tweet, I got into this film festival. I don't even have a movie out right now. Why am I feeling like I feel like I got rejected from a film festival for a movie I didn't make, for a festival I didn't even apply to. So like I don't get like individual attacks like that anymore. It's just a general anxiety where part of my mind is doing its best to keep me down. And it's a constant struggle, sometimes to be like, why does my own mind do that? Yeah. Like it doesn't
sabotage.
Get me. Yeah. Like why does my own mind sabotage me? And that's why I started the podcast. And this kind of goes back to the documentary world a little bit. A lot of the conversations, and it does definitely applies here as well, a lot of the conversations about mental health in the documentary world eventually all circle back around to sustainable careers. And a lot of the anxiety that filmmakers, doc and otherwise, all feel are, like, where's my next paycheck going to come from? Why am I doing that? And we're driven to it. And I'm glad that you have a day job that can help supplement things and all of that. That certainly helps as well. But I've always, that whole dichotomy of, I am a creative person, I want to do this creative endeavor, but that's maybe not the best path to go for the stability that I also crave in life. Yeah. It's one of the reasons why I left narrative filmmaking in its entirety, when I first moved out here, because I had to just live. I had to find a way to pay my rent. I had to do all these things on my own, and trying to be an independent filmmaker in the year 2000, year 2001 was not getting me there. It wasn't paying my rent, so I had to find full-time work. So I'm, and also having imposter syndrome, I'm always enthralled by hearing other people's adventures in that, because as creative people, we get drawn, we all want stability. We all want money to, to pay our rent and to live and all that. But we also feel driven to this profession that is the antithesis of stability,
Yeah.
So in some way, like, we have anxiety and we want to reduce our own anxiety. And yet we've somehow chosen a path that exacerbates that. So
But I
I'm
don't
like,
think like we get drawn to it. I think we get drawn to it in a critical period where we don't actually know how to get there.
mhm.
Like, I don't think we're like, our eyes are wide open and we're like, this isn't stable, sign me up. Like, we're like, movies are magical and I want to be a part of that.
Right.
And then you're like so far deep in, and then you find out how hard it is. And you're like, well, I already love it so much. I guess I have to do this.
Right. Right. Yeah. I guess maybe I got out of it, early enough to not have to deal with that. I just wanted the stability. I was like, I just want, especially in the post world, and you're always hustling, to edit someone's stuff or to be an AE on something, and you're always trying to get on a show. And I just wanted, like, I didn't want to do that. Like, it's just too much, and I actually ended up leaving Los Angeles for a while. I ended up working for Apple up in Cupertino for 2 years because I just didn't want to do the whole LA, starving artist work in Starbucks thing. Like, I wanted to, because I didn't have family to like fall back on. I'm like, I have no safety net right now.
Yeah.
So I got to I need the stability for it. And luckily came back around to it now with the success of Getting Over and stuff like that. But I'm just always interested in hearing other people's paths and other people's journeys.
If it makes anyone feel better, it makes me feel better on a weekly basis. I always ask the people we interview on Making Movies is Hard. I always ask them, like, do you feel like a success? And these are people
Right.
who have like made massive, big budget films, or like they're like 2-time Sundance alums or whatever. And every single one of them, and I don't think it's self-deprecating. Their tone gets serious, and they get quiet, and they say, no, I feel like a failure every single day.
Hmm.
And they always say they never know if the next project's going to hit. They never know if they'll get to do another project. And I guess that's a great unifier. And just taking the conversation circular a little bit, like, we are all suffering right now for various different reasons, but at the very surface level, we're suffering because we all can't make content. We're more alike than we think we are, right? Even like the very famous, quote unquote, successful ones,
right,
are suffering right now.
And it's one of the reasons that I hate the competitive nature of the whole film festival circuit, because it pits us, against each other to fight for little distribution crumbs and things like that. So,
well, we always, in the women in film world, it's been a long time of women fighting for opportunities in film. But what the metaphor that keeps get circulating is we always feel like we're fighting for the same piece of pie, but like, it's stupid. And I'm sure you've heard it 30,000 times before, but it's like, just make the pie bigger. Make the pie, you don't all have to go for that one little slice,
Right.
like, we just make a bigger pie so more people can enjoy it. And I do think with the democratization of film, more people are able to make movies. And the whole reason why I made my first feature was because I felt emotionally I wouldn't be satisfied until I did. And I have to say that I derived a lot of satisfaction from making the first feature, as I'm sure you did, from finishing Getting Over. And all of us should work together to make sure that the other person can complete their project, because it like completes them as a human too, even if it's not financially successful.
Right.
Your podcast is very smart. The idea of connecting film and mental health, it's like, we make movies to feel whole.
Yeah. I get to the point where, like, let me take the skills that I have and help lift other people up, whether it be, just featuring someone on the show or working on someone's actual project and making their thing the best they can. Because I had, not that I had my moment in the sun and I'm ready to, like, ride off in the sunset, but, I can help people So let me do that, the best way I know how. And that's doing
Film
that.
God's bestowed a gift upon you and you're giving back.
And I'm happy to do so. So I got two more quick questions for you, and then I'm going to let you go. So one, and it kind of answers itself because we're all locked in our houses. But what do you like to do to, like, when you're having a panic attack or when you're having anxiety? A lot of people that I've spoken to like to go on hikes or like to watch movies, read books and stuff like that. What, before COVID and after COVID, do you guys do to take the edge off and have fun and get away from the angst of all of this?
A lot of my panic attacks come at night. So I'm already in bed and, we can't leave the bedroom once we go into the bedroom because the kids, we're in a one bedroom and our kid sleeps in the kitchen. So it's like, you can't leave. You're stuck there.
Right.
So it's really just lying in bed and watching something that makes you feel comforted. And in general, I'm finding myself doing that. Like, we went through all of Harry Potter in quarantine, which I'd never really paid attention to. I'd watched it, but I didn't really care. And like, I got a true affinity for National Treasure through quarantine, where
the Nicolas Cage movie.
I encourage you. I know, like, it seems a little silly, but I encourage you to watch those again. They are
silly movies are good.
Wonderful movies. They really are. So yes, it's escape into movies for us. And then I know it's dorky, but this whole cooking thing is helping me a lot. But before COVID, what was it? I think just making sure I go for a walk and get out of the house. And Sean knows that too. Like, he'll be like, "Did you get out of the house today?" I'm like, "No."
I need to do that more too. Like, I just need to take the dog around the corner. Like my wife will be like, just go take the dog to the corner and like get some sun. And sometimes I do it, and sometimes, more times than not, I'm just like, I'm comfortable in my chair,
right?
So it's just easier to not get up. And I mean, she has told me that she thinks I am clinically depressed. That's a whole other conversation for another day. But she thinks, like, I don't feel depressed. But then when you look up the symptoms of depression, I seem to have a lot of them. And especially now, like, I can't stop watching the news either. I can't.
Oh, don't do it.
I know it's I can't stop. Like, the problem is it's like the WWE-ification of the world. Like, you just always want to watch the car accident, so like it's tough to turn it off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've just found that my attention span isn't that great. So like, I haven't watched as many movies as I would like because I just can't seem to get to the end of them sometimes.
Well, sometimes you watch sentimental schmaltzy stuff.
I need, watch the stuff that I've seen a million times before. Like, I just start watching like old episodes of television, like, or, we'll watch like SVU reruns from like 3 p.m. to midnight. And then, the day's gone. Great. We got past another one, so things like that. So just, those are the things that kind of take the edge off, over here. So,
I get that.
All right. One last question for you. I'm going to let you go. And it's the easiest question, really. Are you happy? Are you happy doing what you're doing? Do you feel like you're on a path to happy? How do you feel about where you're at in life in general?
I get up to go to the bathroom constantly because I drink a lot of water and, in the middle of the night. Sorry, this is not just in the middle of the night. And when I walk in the darkness, I have to creep because I don't want the baby to hear me, and I creep into the bathroom and I think to myself, I love my partner. I love my dog. I love my son. I hope they stay safe. And
in that order?
It's usually son, dog. I joke. They're all.
We won't hold you to that. It changes at any given moment.
Yeah. And I think that means I feel like I derive meaning from who I'm surrounding myself by, and I'm proud of a lot of things I've accomplished. I would say maybe once a week or once every few days do I feel contentment. So in general, I probably don't. I'm not very content. It's when I'm sitting on the floor, my son is leaning on me, and I'm watching crap television, and it's silent, but he's leaning on me, and I'm just sitting, and there's nothing for me to do. I don't have to run out of the room. I don't have to do it. So I would say, I think that's contentment. But in terms of like happiness, if I'm being truly honest, I don't know. I don't know if I am.
Hey, that's a perfectly reasonable response.
Yeah.
Like the more people I talk, it's not, I've learned it's not, when I first decided that one of the quote unquote gimmicks of the show would be asking people that at the end, that I would get yes or no's. Yes, I've made a feature. I feel happy. And it's really more of a continuum that obviously can come and go on any given day. Like you use the word contentment, which is great. Like sometimes you're going to wake up and you're happy. Sometimes you're going to wake up and you don't feel so great. So like, it's not like you wake up one morning and like, oh, my movie's finally on iTunes, I am happy. It's just never like that. But what asking that question does for me is it lets me hear the definitions that other people have of happy, because I always thought that the happy was a thing that like, make your movie, I'll be happy. I want to make a movie. I made a movie, so I must be happy. I want to get into South by Southwest. I got into South by Southwest. I'm happy. Like, I'm happy, but like in life, like, am I happy? Like, I always thought that once I got to a certain point, that would be the happy thing. And I learned that that's not necessarily the best way to go about it. And that other people have very different opinions of what happiness is. And I love hearing how people define that for themselves. But if I can hear how other people look at the world and how other people think of happiness and what it means to them, maybe I can break off those shackles that I had kept on myself for so long and be happy in a different way. And not necessarily, I've tied it to my career way too much is really, the easiest way of saying it. Like, I will be happy when my career is such and such, whether it be with my own movie or an award, whatever it is.
It'll keep moving. Like,
So just now that like I've grown up and I'm in a different place in the world, I've just been really interested to hear how other people define happiness for themselves, because it'll only make me a better person if I can incorporate some of that.
Well, I asked Sean a lot if he's happy, and he says he's happy. And I think a lot of it is probably due to his even keel. Like, I'm very, up and down, and he's very steady. And I think if you put a certain expectation or pressure on the concept of happiness, which I do, like, I'm like, I want to be joyous at all times, and I want to feel exuberance. And I watching, I mentioned I watched Little Women last night, and like, they are real happy. Like 85% of this movie, like, feeling like emanating joy from their faces and bodies. And I think when you grow up watching movies, you see that kind of like ecstasy, and you're just like, why is my life not?
Right.
So it is that compare and despair that comes in career and mental health. But I think it's a spectrum. Like, I have certain goals for my weight. I have certain goals for my career, and I have certain goals for myself as an artist that I've yet to hit. And I think as long as I feel like I'm on the track for those, I'm going to feel better. I don't need to hit them. I just need to know they're within reach. And so I'm just, maybe that it's about managing the expectations a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, no, I get that. Well, Liz Manashil, thank you so much for joining us on a Saturday morning.
Thank you.
I'll let you guys get on with the rest of your day. But yeah, thank you for chatting. I'm so... Yeah, we're going. Yeah, that's how we'll be happy. We're going to take a nap. It's a good Saturday, and I'll wake up nice and refreshed and happy. You bet. You bet.
Thank you, Jason.
And there you have it. Our conversation with Liz Manashil from Bread and Butter and Speed of Life and Sundance Creative Distribution Initiative and all that fun stuff. She's fantastic. She knows what she's talking about, and she's got to deal with a lot of the same stuff that you and I do just to try to make our movies in this business and try to get stuff done and have a sustainable career. So hope you guys enjoyed our conversation with Liz. Next week, we have on another independent film legend. We have the fantastic Alex Ferrari from Indie Film Hustle, and his latest movie is On the Corner of Ego and Desire, which was shot at Sundance. So you'll have to check that out. It's on Amazon now and a couple of other platforms. Alex is the man behind Indie Film Hustle. So if you're in the indie film space and you don't know about Indie Film Hustle, then you don't know nothing. So check out Indie Film Hustle and stay tuned for our interview with Alex next week. We'll probably be going back to bi-weekly shows after that. I wanted to get out a bunch of the ones we were backed up on, so they are coming at you now, fast and furious. We'll be back with Alex next week, and then a couple of weeks after that, we'll have on Diliana Delcheva and Jack Bravina, a husband and wife filmmaking team. They're fantastic. I used to work with Diliana at Framework Studio, just like I did with Kat Reinhardt from last week. So stay tuned for that. We have more great shows coming up for you. And thank you for joining us for Head Above Water. And we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.